down that camera and strap in. It's time for another episode of TOGCHAT Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news and tips, along with your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, good Wednesday evening. Thanks for joining me for episode number 209 of TOGCHAT Live. I hope you're all healthy, safe, and of course, practicing social distancing, wearing your masks, all that good stuff. Already, I'm seeing photographers here from all over the world, so please be sure to check in, leave a comment, let me know you're here, and let me know where you're watching from. I've got Phil here from Dallas, Texas, Lynn from New York, we got Ken from the UK, Jim's here from Maine, I got Alvin in Virginia, Robert in Florida, Beverly in Ohio, Rick in Connecticut, Patrick all the way from Paris, Cooley in Indiana, Anthony's here from North Carolina, Carl's here from Illinois. We got people here from all over the place. Thank you. It's always cool to see people from around the world tuning in to spend an hour to chat about their love of photography. Now, do me a quick favor. I want you all to look like right down here, down like underneath there where I'm pointing. If you don't see anything there, go ahead and check out the chat window here, right? I'm going to put in the link tog.chat/live. so that you can go ahead and you can share and let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Twitter, Facebook, as always, they're the fastest way to get the word out. And hey, it's really not that hard. Don't hesitate to go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, give it a like, right? So how can I help you with your photography tonight? You're here. How can I help? Start posting your questions. I'll do my best to answer them all in the next 60 minutes. I've only got a few lined up, so this is a good opportunity. Things that you're struggling with, things that you're just not sure about. Come on, start typing, okay? Remember, this is a gear-free zone, so I'll discuss anything that has to do with the hows and the whys behind creating great images. And, that can include gear. If it's a question about how to do something, just don't ask me what your next camera should be. In fact, don't ask anyone on YouTube about a decision like that. I mean, seriously, right? So let's go ahead and dive in. A little bit of photography news, right? It's been a busy week on the camera front. Now, we're not going to get deep into the gear, but just a summary here. Canon has announced some new cameras and everybody's complaining because of a feature that most people won't use that has overheating issues. Nikon, on the other hand, they announced a new entry-level mirrorless camera and people are complaining because they like the price, but they want pro-level features. And the camera does have 2 card slots and people are still not happy. Pentax announced that it's sticking with DSLRs. Oh, wait, I forgot. Nobody cares about Pentax. And Sony is going to announce the A7S 30 on July 28th. Oh, wait, it's the A7S 3. It just feels like they should be up to model 30 by now since they announce a new camera every couple of weeks. Leica, they announced a new 40 megapixel camera, but who the heck can afford a Leica anyway? And good news for me and my fellow Olympus users, more details were revealed about the plans for the future of the company, and reassurances were offered about the commitment to continuing the brand, likely under a different name. Anybody know a good tattoo artist that can make changes? On a more practical note, Nikon has announced, better late than never, that they will release webcam software for their cameras next month. So now pretty much anyone with a mirrorless camera can use their camera as a webcam for Zoom and Skype without needing any special hardware. And in today's world, that's actually kind of a big deal, right? So all that means, not a lot of exciting news this week, and that's okay, right? So I do want to go ahead and share with you folks a couple updates here on my online presentations that I'm doing. The first one, shoot prep, that's coming up on Tuesday, August 11th. And this one is an exciting one for me because you guys have been asking for this for a long time. This is start to finish, every little detail of how I prep a shoot, how I communicate with the models, how I communicate with the makeup artist. All of the attendees at this presentation will have a series of downloads that they will get where I will be sharing my prep documents that I give to my makeup artists and to my models. I'll be sharing the email templates that I use for scheduling, all of the information, and even the modeling releases that I use, okay? And then on Tuesday, August 11th, I will be presenting the psychology and techniques behind photographing beauty. This is a fun one for me because it's really kind of the specific process behind doing beauty shots. How I come up with the ideas, how I develop those ideas, how I collaborate with makeup artists and sometimes stylists and the models. So all of the information for these two courses, I am going to share the links in the chat window with you right now. And you can also find the links for these two courses in the description right below the video. So I hope to see you there. And of course, while you're on the site, make sure you check out the schedule of upcoming classes. There is a mix of both free and paid classes, all of them very reasonably priced, but you'll find all that information in the last link that I just shared with you there. Okay? All right. So let's get into nice questions. That's why we're here. How can I help you improve your photography? So I had just a few questions that came in early tonight. So let's go ahead and we'll take a quick look at those questions first, and then we'll dig in because I see some really good ones coming up in the chat here, okay? So the first one I have is from Patrick, and this is kind of a more of a business slash marketing question. He's working on creating a website that is dedicated to product photography. So his question is, can I launch it with less than 10 photos that I really like, or should I wait until I have more photos? And you know, this is a question slash dilemma slash concern that is much more common than photographers are really aware of, because the mistake photographers make when they're first starting their marketing is they tend to choose quantity over quality. That is never the right selection. Sure, you know, you feel that pressure, you feel that idea that you want to be able to impress people with all the different things that you can do, but you have to understand that as humans, we're kind of wired to remember that lowest common denominator, and the lowest common denominator is going to be the worst image. So, as you've heard me say many, many times before, you can look like a rock star with 5 pictures, or you can look like a complete hack with 10. You only ever want to put your best foot forward. So Patrick goes on to mention that he's had several requests on social media, and often he's asked for his portfolio to see the rest of his work, and he feels like it's bad not to have one. So Patrick, you have kind of a good problem here, right? If your social media presence and sharing of these images is starting to generate interest, then the tough love response that I'm going to give you is get your butt in gear and build out that portfolio. Now, obviously, that takes some time and effort. But in the meantime, yeah, if you have, I would say at least half a dozen images. So 6 images, 6. Go ahead, launch it. All right. Make sure as part of launching it that you are putting the proper amount of effort into your About Patrick page. You know, don't tell people your whole life story. Hopefully you've paid attention to both my YouTube videos on websites for photographers, and I don't know if you've taken my online presentation about websites for photographers, but I would encourage you to do that. It is important that your site is presenting the right message. But I would say to you, and especially since I am familiar with the work, I know that you have some very high quality work, I would encourage you, yes, go ahead and launch the website. That would be absolutely fine. Okay. And the next one I have here from Jermaine. Joe, can you share some ideas for finding inspiration and coming up with ideas for themed shoots? Well, so honestly, Jermaine, the first thing I am going to mention, and I'm going to give you a bit of an answer here, but this is the class that you want to sign up for. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat window one more time, okay? This is the class where I will actually be talking about my process and how I do the planning and all of that stuff. So I would encourage you to start there. But in the meantime, I will tell you that sometimes if you are just kind of stuck, one of the best resources that is out there, well, actually, I'll give you two: Pinterest, Instagram. You can go to Pinterest and you could type in beauty portraits or fashion portraits, or you same thing, you know, go to Instagram and do a hashtag search for beauty portraits, fashion portraits. You'll find loads of great images. However, and by the way, I actually do that from time to time, but let me be clear about something. When I am searching for images and I find one and I say, ooh, I want to save this one, or I want to bookmark this one, I'm not looking to replicate that image. That's zombie photography. Don't be a zombie. What I'm looking at in that image is I'm saying, ooh, you know what? I really like that color scheme. That's not a color scheme that I would have thought of on my own. Or I really like that hairstyle. Or I really like the geometric shapes in that makeup. Or I really love that pose. So when I'm going through these resources, I'm usually taking away elements of the images that strike me as something that I've never done or that I find interesting. Or honestly, sometimes it's even a matter of like, you know, I like where they're headed, but I don't like the way they did it. But it gives me this idea. Cool. I don't care what it sparks as long as it sparks something, right? So the idea is when you go to these websites, Pinterest, Instagram, wherever, and you find ideas that you like, certainly if you're just learning, if you're beginning in the process, there is nothing wrong with setting yourself a goal to essentially copy that image. However, once you've copied it, you don't put it on social media. That's not the prize. You don't deserve a pat on the back. You don't deserve a reward. And you certainly shouldn't be claiming it as your own, because just like Xeroxes, I know you're all old enough to know what a Xerox is. The copy is never as good as the original. So the act of copying it, you're doing that as a learning process. And that's great. But then your challenge is, once you have learned the techniques, once you have learned what's involved to do it, is to turn around and find a way to make it your own, to add your style to it, your spin to it, to take it to a whole nother level, to improve it, to better it, to change it. Those are the things that then give you an image that you show to the world and say, look what I did. So that would be my my advice for you there. Okay. All right. So going back into the chat here, and again, guys, I see some good questions, but we got enough time. Load them up. Let me help you guys out. So, question here from Steve tonight. Let's see here. Joe, considering you know and have access to great photographers, what mark or legacy do you think you will leave on the photography industry and why? You're an inspiration to many. Well, Steve, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I sincerely appreciate that. Um, Gosh, you know, Steve, I don't think that I'm in that and I'm not being modest. I'm just being realistic. I do not consider myself to be in that level of amazing photographers. The way that I like to define myself, and I feel it's most appropriate, is I'm a good photographer who has worked his butt off and had the good fortune to be able to spend the overwhelming majority of his adult life paying his bills with a camera. So I survived that process. I'm at a point now where, admittedly, I don't really have the desire and the drive to deal with clients the way that I used to and the way that was necessary. So I am really enjoying being able to share the things that I've learned over the years and try to help new photographers, you know, learn efficiently. I find myself stuck in this kind of in between spot where, on one hand, the nerd and geek in me loves the technology and all the resources that we have available. I'm not one of those people that has the mentality of, as you get older, it's like, oh, it was always so much better when we were younger. No, I don't think that way. I enjoy the change. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the new learning process. So I'm all about this technology. I'm all about social media. I'm all about Google and YouTube. But at the same time, I see and I realize that this abundance of resources that we have also, in many ways, makes it harder for people to learn. And if a person is not particularly good at discerning quality from poor quality information, and or if a person is lazy and just accepts whatever information is put in front of them as the gospel, right? um, that becomes very detrimental. So people on here will frequently say, you're a straight shooter, no BS, that kind of stuff. I actually appreciate that. I know that people don't always appreciate being on the receiving end, and it is never my goal to make somebody feel like crap in the process. But I'm very aware of the fact that I fail at that goal sometimes. But I really want to try and help people understand, what does it really take to succeed as a photographer? And when I say succeed as a photographer, success can be defined in many ways. That might be making money and paying your bills with a camera. It may be just getting to a point where your images reflect the quality and the feel and everything that you want, or maybe it's literally just getting to a point where you're winning a couple monthly awards at your local camera club, right? It doesn't matter what the definition of success is, and don't ever let anybody define what success should be for any of you, right? So, so Steve, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. I guess more than anything, it's just kind of a pay it forward type thing, or as I get closer to the end of my career, I would hope to be able to give a little bit back for everything that the industry has given to me over the years. Okay. All right, scrolling on down here. What do we got? I know I saw some others come in. Let's see, Steve G. Hi, Joe. I would like to know your settings for EVF on an EM1X. I'm having a tough time with astrophotography focus at night. Thanks in advance from Winthrop, Washington. So couple of things, Steve. Number one, I'm not sure how my settings for the EVF on the EM1X are going to help you with astrophotography focus. Because here's the thing, right? I learned not that long ago, December of this past year, I had the good fortune to spend a week in the desert outside of Tucson, Arizona, on a dude ranch with my fellow Olympus Visionaries, several of whom are outstanding experts at astrophotography. I had never done it at all. So part of the reason why Olympus took us to this desert to do this is that they were preparing us for the release of the EM1 Mark III. And that's when they first put the cameras in our hands. And that's when we first got to play with Starry AF. And so in the course of learning about Starry AF on the EM1 Mark III, and in the course of going out into the desert at night with Peter Baumgarten and Frank Smith and Ralph Lee Hopkins, guys who just do incredible astrophotography work, Alex McClure, one of the things that I heard over and over and over from them, because I literally was like a sponge. I was the little kid, that kept asking why, nonstop questions. I wanted to learn and understand as much as I could. And the one thing that they all talked about over and over and over again, as far as why they were so excited about that feature, is the fact that it is almost impossible to focus properly on stars. One common mistake that photographers make is they think, well, just set your lens in infinity and you're good to go. No, actually, that doesn't work, okay? Every one of these guys had many stories of nights where they spent an entire evening outside in the desert, in the snow. Peter lives, north of the border in Canada. Just extreme conditions, shooting image after image after image, only to get home the next morning and realize that they didn't have a single in focus shot, not one. So, so that being said, as far as techniques for focusing, I am definitely not the guy, but I can point you in the right direction really easily. So bear with me 1 second here, and I am going to get you a link to the Learning Center on the Olympus website. Okay. And if you use the search tool in the Learning Center, you will find lots of great information from the guys who are the astrophotographers about how they do their settings, how they focus, all that kind of stuff. If you can give me a little bit more specific, Steve, in terms of what you're looking for with regards to the EVF, I'll try and share with you, my settings. But I can tell you straight up front, on every one of my Olympus cameras, the EM1 Mark II, the EM1 Mark III, the EM5 III, the EM1X, I'm using the default settings for the EVF. The only changes I've made to that aspect of the camera is I adjust the diopters because of my glasses so that I can see better, because I wear trifocals, so I've got weird lens thing going on here, so I've got to make sure that I can see properly through the EVF. But other than that, I use the default settings. So I get the sense that part of what you're asking me is you're thinking if you brighten up that EVF, you'll be able to see the focus. That's not how it works. So check out those tips in the Olympus Learning Center, and you'll be able to come up with some kind of good starting points. Okay. All right. From Aaron with catch lights. There it is. Is there a better part or a side of the eye to have them in, or is it personal taste? Funny you should ask, Aaron. Very recently, I did a video, and here, I'll go ahead and I'll share the screen, and I'm going to share the link with you here, but it's right here on the front page of my YouTube channel. It's called Catch Lights for Portraits. It's a lighting tutorial. Talks all about catch lights. The short answer, and I would encourage you to watch it because I'm confident based on your question, you'll learn some things from the video. But the short answer is, if you are a photographer who approaches photography creatively, visually, then it is personal preference, and it can be influenced by science if you want. And I'll tell you some of the science in a second. If you are a person that follows the rules and believes that there's a rule for everything, okay? Well, if you're one of those folks, then you could follow the guidelines that you'll frequently hear from people who judge competitions and things like that, where catch lights should be at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock. There should only be one in each eye, yada, yada, yada. The reality of it is that you are going to create a lot of really boring pictures if you lock yourself into that mentality. So my recommendation would be watch that video. You'll learn a lot about the science of how we perceive catch lights and what you need to worry about and what you don't need to worry about. So that's where I would encourage you to start. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Going back to where I was. All right. Let's see. Joshua, thank you for the kind words about the classes. And let's see. And Jermaine, also a follow-up statement there, said the part about taking elements of images. That's a great answer and tip. Yeah, I mean, to me, Jermaine, it's kind of it's forcing, and I'm referring to the question about how do I find inspiration and ideas for my beauty shots. That idea of going to a Pinterest or going to Instagram, etc. What you have to realize, folks, as photographers, right? our brains are like these visual databases, with our eyes. So all through your life, you are influenced by things. True story, probably 10 years ago now, but my wife and I we were on vacation somewhere, and when we're on vacation, she likes to wander into little shops and things like that. And we wandered into this kind of antique shop that I had no desire to be in. I'm not into antiques, but they had these big, huge bins of the old Life and Look magazines, and they were organized like by date of publication. So I was kind of curious at that because I remember these from when I was a kid and when I was just starting out in photography. So I started going through and looking back for dates from when I was like 13, 14, 15 years old. And as I was pulling out some of the editions from this time frame and looking at the shots on the covers and then looking at some of the fashion layouts, like I started to kind of get chills. And I wasn't sure, like, am I a fraud? Or is this cool? Because as I'm looking at these pictures, I'm realizing, like, oh my God, like I see elements of my work here. And I don't mean like, oh, my work is as good as what was in Life and Look. No, 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 no. I mean, the kinds of choices that I make visually, I'm realizing that when I was a teenager and I was learning photography, Life and Look magazine, I looked at religiously every week. And of course, keep in mind, I wanted to be a photojournalist. So that's really why I was studying those magazines. But we're impacted and we are influenced creatively by everything we see. You can go watch television for an evening or go watch a movie for that matter. And the movie may be color graded with yellows and greens, and you walk away from that movie and it's kind of stuck in your mind. It's almost like the song you can't get out of your head. It's like stuck in your mind. Like, I want to work with those colors, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So the idea of like, hey, I'm feeling a little stuck and I don't have a good idea, so let me go to Pinterest, let me go to Instagram. All you're really doing is you're kind of speeding up the process, right? You're going and you're submerging yourself in a idea-rich environment by looking at Pinterest or Instagram, and you're pulling pieces away from it. So and honestly, folks, at the end of the day, let's be real, right? It's up to you to kind of hold yourself accountable, to not just do the copy and say, hey, look what I did, right? That's not the prize. It's just not. Unfortunately, we can go on to Facebook, we can go on Instagram any day, scroll for 5 minutes, and we'll find photographers, especially if you go into the photography groups, that they're lazy. And, it's like, yeah, I copied this picture. Yay, look at this. And it's not that they're saying they're copied it, even worse yet, they're presenting it like, oh, look what I did. But you recognize, what they're trying to copy. And sadly, it's a copy. It's nowhere near as good. It's usually a pretty bad attempt because it was kind of their first attempt at getting there, and they're getting a little ahead of themselves by sharing it. Unfortunately, the simple reality is, gang, we don't have to share everything we do. We all get annoyed. Almost every one of you gets annoyed at those friends that you have that like takes a picture of every time they go to a restaurant and posts it, right? That's like the ongoing meme. But yet, and it's always funny when I hear photographers bitching about people that post their food pictures, but yet photographers are just as bad. We went click, gotta show it. I took a picture. People should care. No, okay, that's not how it works. And if you think about the photographers whose work that you appreciate and admire the most, and I don't mean me, I mean way above me, gang. Come on, right? You don't see them posting pictures every day or every week. It could be 3 or 4 weeks between pictures because they're not posting every single picture they take. They've achieved a standard and a style, and not everything they do is going to meet that standard and that style. So it's not going to get shown to the world. So anyway, that's kind of my take on that. All right. Let's see here. Cooley, planning a hot tub shoot and a swimming pool shoot. What would you use as lighting? Oh, Cooley, come on, really? You're gonna ask me one of those questions? So Cooley, I gotta ask you like 10 questions back because you haven't given me enough information. If I answer this question, I'm not helping you. I'm just blowing a bunch of hot air. So, okay, you're doing a hot tub shoot and a swimming pool shoot. Daytime, nighttime, inside, outside. What kind of shoot? Like, I think I know what you're telling me, but when you say I'm doing a hot tub shoot and a swimming pool shoot, that says to me you're doing product shots for manufacturers of hot tubs and swimming pools. But I'm willing to bet money you're going to have some hot chick in the hot tub or the swimming pool. So give me a little bit more detail and then tell me what kind of a shot you're trying to get. Like, what do you want? Okay, so you're going to shoot a girl in a hot tub or swimming pool. What are you trying to do? And then I can tell you what I would use for lighting. But just to say I'm going to shoot a hot tub in a swimming pool, there's so many different things I could do with lighting. It depends on why am I taking the picture, right? Give me a little bit more, okay? Joe's photography. Let's see here. If you have a project and you'd like to use a piece of gear and this would benefit them, would you contact them and see if they'd be interested when you don't have a huge following? Oh, wait a second. So, Joe, do you mean, sorry, I'm trying to make sense out of this. I think that you have a couple typos in here. Do you mean if I'd like to use a specific piece of gear, like from a manufacturer? Is that what you're referring to? If that's what you mean, Joe, there is a lesson that I was taught when I was a kid. And your parents probably taught you the same lesson. So first and foremost, I got to stick with that lesson, but then I'll give you the practical answer. That lesson is, look, you don't get what you don't ask for. And then the other part of that lesson is the worst that anybody can ever say is no, right? So if you are talking about like contacting a manufacturer because you've got a project, et cetera, the reality of it is, yeah, if you don't have a following, they're not going to send you gear, right? They're just not, okay? Because obviously the gear costs a lot of money. That's a big risk. The fact of the matter is you can rent the gear if you need to try it out and not buy it. I mean, honestly, you know, it's fascinating. Professional photographers who make their living in photography understand the value of renting gear. Amateur photographers are the ones that are crazy enough to go out and buy everything. It's just how it is, right? Some of the highest paid photographers in New York, LA, they don't own a studio. They don't own all of their gear. They rent it. Client pays for it, period, right? So it's the amateur photographers that tend to go out and buy everything because, you know, most of the stuff, you don't need it all the time. You know, it's certainly, we all get gear acquisition syndrome, right? You know, it's one thing to want it. Of course, I want it. Who doesn't want it, right? But the reality of it is do you actually need to have it all the time? You know, how often are you actually going to use it, right? So that's the challenge there. But yeah, manufacturers for the most part are not going to be sending you gear unless you do have, and it's not about having a following, by the way. There are a lot of photographers that have big followings and they're still not going to get stuff. It's about having influence, okay? When you hear, you know, people talk about all these, you know, young girls on Instagram that do all the beauty stuff and all that, you don't hear them talk about their following. They are, you know, referred to as influencers. Guy, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate the super chat. Thank you. They are referred to as influencers, and that's the key, okay? You know, in my case, you folks here, you know, frequently will give me the compliment, which honestly means so much to me. And that is that, you know, when I do talk about gear, you know, yeah, I'll joke around on that, but it's no BS. If I like it, I like it. If I hate it, I hate it. I'm not going to spin a story. I'm going to give you both sides of the equation and basically try to arm you with enough information that you can make your own intelligent decisions. You know, never have you heard me say, well, I'm an Olympus shooter. You should go buy an Olympus. Never. Okay. If somebody were to ask me today, what do you think of Olympus? Do you think it's smart or safe to buy an Olympus camera right now? I would say yes. But let's just say hypothetically that photographer is a Nikon shooter or Sony shooter, Canon, whatever. I would be the first to also tell them, hey, I'm just some guy on YouTube. Don't buy the camera because I said so. Go rent it. If you can't rent it where you're at, go to a camera store. Take a secure digital disc with you and use it, right? And try it out in the store, okay? But never buy a camera just because some bozo on YouTube said buy the camera, right? It's such an insane thing to do. It just is, right? So yeah, I mean, that's my take there. Okay. Cooley's got a follow up here on his question. It's a couple that wants to do something different, but it will be early morning at my house. So I mean, Cooley, again, I still can't help you with the lighting, and I'm not trying to be difficult, man. But like, so are we? When we say something different, are we talking like, you're trying to do kind of like a boudoir thing? I'm not entirely understanding kind of where you're headed with it in that regard, and what kind of a vibe you want. You kind of got to work your shot backwards. So the first thing I'll tell you, Cooley, is don't do what Joe would do, right? It's because it's not about what I would do. You have to decide what do you want this image to look like? What's the feel? What's the vibe? That answer right there, that dictates how you're going to light it, what the lighting needs to be, etc. Okay. If you're doing it early enough in the morning, depending on where the pool and where the hot tub are located and where the sun comes up, you could probably do some really awesome natural light stuff, right? If you're not doing it early enough in the morning, or if you don't have really good sunrise, well, then you're probably going to need to go ahead and create some kind of light. But then the question is the pool going to be in shade? Is the hot tub going to be in shade? You need a plan A and a plan B if it's going to be in the sun, because it could be cloudy the day you shoot, it could be sunny. So again, all I'm trying to get is you can't ask 50,000-foot questions about something like that and expect that you're going to get a useful answer. The vibe that you want that shot to have, that's your lighting right then and there. Okay. So, if you can give me more specifics, I'll gladly try and break it down for you. But if I answer what you've given me so far, I'm going to give you something that's going to send you down a path that may not help you at all. Okay. So, let's see here. Scrolling on down. And so, Guzman, I don't know that I can help you with the information that you've given me. So you may need to give me some more information here. It says I need to take good photos of berries and the grape seed skin, and I can't get it. Any help? So he's got the OMD 10 Mark III. Give me a little bit more detail. I mean, number one, I'd like to know, do you have a macro lens? Because it sounds like you definitely need a macro lens as far as that goes. So, let me know a little bit more about what you're working with. Okay. All right. Let's see. From Patrick, Joe, do you think that in the digital age, it is still useful to create a paper book to send to potential clients, advertising agencies, and art directors? Patrick, it depends on your market. So I believe that you're in Paris. So if you are actually in Paris, like Paris proper, I don't mean like a suburb that's an hour away, but if you are in Paris, and if you are going to be marketing to um, the larger agencies that handle the major brand accounts, then the fact of the matter is, yes, there is tremendous value to still having a printed book, and it needs to be creative, meaning not only the images in it need to be amazing, but there should be something about the presentation of the book. I have seen photographers that will actually go to great expense and have fancy wooden crates made to deliver their books in, or they will get metal covers etched and that with their logo in it. Again, it's all part of standing out and establishing kind of a tone about your work. But now that I said that, don't run off and do that because Joe said, oh, it's a good idea. I gave you my answer based upon New York City, advertising capital of the world. I am making an assumption that if we're talking about the major advertising agencies in Paris, it is probably a very similar type of scenario. But you should research that a little bit more locally to see what is being done by the photographers that are doing the high-end commercial advertising work in Paris. I know of a few photographers in London who do high-end work for top agencies, and they also have very unique presentations with actual books that they present. But I don't have any definitive information specifically about Paris, but I would be willing to bet yes, they like to see that tangible book whenever possible. That's not to say that your digital online presentation is not extremely important, because it is extremely important. But there is value to having kind of that leave behind presentation. Okay. So Beverly, if the camera is as good as the person behind it, why do you feel people need to buy more expensive cameras? I know people look at sensor size, resolution, pixel, etc. I hear you can get great photos no matter what camera. It's the person behind the camera. I guess if you're doing a billboard, you need a better sensor. Beverly. Beverly, Beverly, Beverly. So a couple of things. It sounds to me like your question has a little bit of frustration in it. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong. I won't be upset. Meaning, it almost sounds like on one hand you're doing a little tug of war with yourself, because there's a piece of gear that you really like, but at the same time you don't really want to spend that money, but yet you hear everybody else talking about spending the money, so you're thinking, well, maybe I should be spending the money. You're not sure. But I do want to show you something, Beverly, just to clarify a point. Let me bring my website up here really quick, and I'm going to share my screen with you then. Okay. Let's see. We're going to go to my website, and in the search box here, I'm going to type in billboard. Actually, I could show you my YouTube video also, but Beverly, this is a 48-foot wide by 14-foot tall billboard. This was shot with the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II. That is a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor. And I assure you, I don't know if I have the picture in the article or not. I don't have it in the article, but if you watch the video, there are close-up images of the actual billboard in the video, and you'll be able to see that it is tack sharp. It's not blurry, it's not soft, none of that kind of stuff. So, I could actually, in response to the whole bit about why do people think they need to buy a more expensive camera, there's a couple reasons, Beverly. Part of it is gas. It's gear acquisition syndrome. Boys love toys, right? That's reason one. Reason two is anxiety. Part of what works great for manufacturers is the fact that younger generations, our millennials, our Gen Zers, they struggle with anxiety much more so than my generation, boomer generation, etc. Okay. As a result of that, the anxiety leads them to feel, well, this is bigger, it's better on a bench, it tests out better, so it's going to give me that little bit more of an edge. The fact is, it doesn't, right? Part of the reason why camera manufacturers are struggling, part of the reason why Olympus is struggling, why Nikon is struggling, even Sony, Canon, they're all losing money. All of them, folks. Olympus has got the bad press as being the first one that's going to go on the chopping block and be sold. Every one of them is days behind. It could happen. It could happen to any of them. Don't think that Sony is a safe bet. Sony's selling more cameras than anybody else, but they're still losing money on their cameras. Sony's in the photography business, because of sensors, right? The cameras are just a convenient byproduct. So Sony could drop their cameras tomorrow and go out and help these other companies and still make a ton of money, right? So let's understand that, the camera companies wisely have realized that they essentially can capitalize on this aspect. But yeah, I mean, what they haven't done, sorry, I got sidetracked there. What they haven't done, all of them, is they haven't paid attention to smartphones. And haven't paid attention properly. I equate what's happening with camera companies to the same kind of thing that has happened to newspapers. Newspapers, especially in the United States, but it's happening all around the world. They went on through the early days of the internet, probably the first 20 years of the internet, thinking, well, you know, they thought of they thought of the internet like they thought of television news back in the 70s and the 80s. It's like, oh, but it's television. It's not as in depth. It's not as good. They felt that they were the only true good journalism that existed. And now most of them are gone. And they're still dropping like flies. They basically had their head in the sand, right? And camera companies have kind of worked with the idea that, well, yeah, you can only take great pictures with these really nice, fancy, expensive cameras. But the fact of the matter is, that's not true. You can take amazing pictures with smartphones, amazing images. And, we've reached the point now where the smartphone technology is slowing down a little bit. We're still waiting to see what Apple's going to drop this year because apparently they've got some big surprises in their cameras this year. But the point is, the advancements in the smartphones, they're slowing down a little. But each year we take more steps into the realm of the mirrorless and the DSLR cameras in terms of their capabilities. And so, there are photographers now making money, making good money, shooting exclusively with smartphones. Good for them. I mean, honestly, good for them. Obviously, like a sports photographer is not going to be able to go out and shoot a baseball game or a football game or an auto race with a smartphone yet, right? But I wouldn't want to bet that day will never come. So, yeah, it's just kind of a scenario of it's only a matter of time that the camera manufacturers have to get smarter. The fact of the matter is, folks, even if you look at Canon and Nikon and Sony and Olympus and Panasonic, their high-end professional cameras don't make them any money. So the cameras that you're all clamoring to get, they're not the ones they're making money on. Nikon just released the Z5 because the Z5 will sell more cameras than the others. It's the cheaper prosumer cameras that are going to sell really well. And that Z5 actually, at least based on the specs and everything else, that's a nice little camera. I give them credit. It's a smart move. I'm surprised they didn't flip it around and do it the other way around, but I think they were feeling the pressure because they took so long to get into the mirrorless market. But, if the camera manufacturers don't come out with cameras that help bridge that gap with the right features, obviously, then sure, smartphones are just going to basically put them all out of business. So, all right. Coolly, going back to the hot tub and swimming pool shoot, figured that I use my 8200 to help the available light and warm it up. Yeah, I mean, I'm all about keep it simple, stupid whenever I can. So if I've got decent light to work with and I'm shooting with a hot tub or swimming pool pulley, I would be inclined to want to try and work with that light and then enhance it. Maybe using a strobe with some gels to create kind of some faux, early sunrise type light, or to create a little bit of a rim. Depending on how I'm planning on setting the couple up in the pool, especially maybe using reflectors to be able to redirect light just to get a little bit more of a pop. It's definitely the kind of shoot where the subtleties in the lighting, if you manage the subtleties, will really take your images to a whole new level, because if you let the strobe kind of take over, there's so much going on when you're talking about water and then two people and all that kind of stuff. Lighting can get really messy really fast. So for me, yes, I would be using the auxiliary lighting, strobes, or reflectors. I would be using them to create the nuance, to give the light some life and some mood. And in my experience, that's always been both easiest and most successful, because it actually gives me more control. Generally the thought process is, well, set up a bunch of lights and basically turn it into a studio and kill the ambient light. Not in a swimming pool, right? And not in a hot tub, and not with two people. That's just making life like brutally tough. So working with the ambient and then using the light to create accents and to help create the mood, Totally the way to go. Okay. All right. Scrolling on down here yet. Patrick, I'm in a suburb about 20 kilometers from Paris. Yeah, so I mean, you're close enough. Paris is definitely your market then, Patrick. So do a little bit of research to see, what what the top commercial photographers there are doing. And Eric, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Thank you. Patrick, I don't know about Paris, but I can tell you here in the United States, there is a photography organization that is dedicated to commercial advertising photographers and media photographers, and it's called ASMP. So it's the American Society of Media Photographers. So I don't know that they'll be much help to you, but there may be a similar organization in France or in Europe that is dedicated to advertising and media photographers. So it may be worth your while looking into an organization like that and joining that to be able to get access to their resources and to kind of get you pointed in the right direction. So that's something that I would suggest that you also maybe look into. Okay. All right. Oh, I got some people showing up here late, but that's cool. Charlie, good to see you. Sven from Down Under, good morning. Darko just got here. Cool. Shooting 9 minutes a week. Good for you, man. Okay. So let's just see. Eric, I'm just glad I've not suffered from gas over the last couple of years. Oh, wait, is that a new camera? Yeah, I seem to remember you telling me you just bought a new camera or two. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Just scrolling back up. I want to make sure I got a couple minutes yet, gang. I think I caught everything that's in the scroll here. Joe's photography with the bifocals, and you were in trifocals. What part of the glass lens do you set the diopter for? Well, I'll tell you what part I set it for, Joe, but really the way you're going to decide is not what I do. It's put your eye up to the viewfinder naturally, comfortably, and see where that sits on your lens. And then you set it. Done. So for me, when I put my eye up to the viewfinder comfortably, it falls right in my middle lens, okay, which is medium distance. So it's not the close-up reading lens, it's not the distance lens, it's the medium distance lens. It's the lens that I would like read the teleprompter with. It's the lens that I read my computer screens with. So that's where I set it. I would not recommend that you basically say, oh, like the reading lens is better, so I have to start like looking through my camera like this. You don't want to do that. Look through the camera naturally. Hold the camera up to your glasses, boom, and wherever it falls, wherever is the spot there, that's what you want to adjust the diopter for. So yeah, the way it works for me may not be the way it works for you, especially since you're bifocals and I am trifocals, but yeah, adjust it for what is most comfortable. And then once you've got it adjusted, take the camera away from your eye, pick it up again naturally without thinking about where you're putting it. Just pick it up naturally and look through it. Do that a couple times, test it out along the way. But yeah, I would definitely do it based on what's most comfortable. Cooley, does the diopter setting affect the focus? No, it just makes it makes it easier for you to tell that the camera is actually in focus, especially if you were going to do like manual focus or use the focus peaking or anything like that. Even being able to read the menu through the camera or read all the information on the screen, it's going to help keep that in focus. So it's kind of like glasses for your glasses is really, what it is in that sense, but it has no impact on the camera's actual focus, whether you're focusing manually or using autofocus. None. Okay. Let's see here. Beverly, have you practiced yet with the new tether tool on the mannequin? I have started that. I finally got the studio downstairs just about put back together. For those of you catching up on that story late, a year ago, last summer, June, I signed a lease on a new studio in kind of an artist co-op that's here in Allentown. It's an old cigar factory that they turned into artist lofts. Awesome. I had north-facing windows, gorgeous. And then COVID-19 comes along in March, and my lease was set to renew in June 1st. you know, I don't want to get into any politics, but I've been following the CDC, the World Health Organization, since like January on all of this stuff. And I don't think we're getting completely back to normal until the middle of next year at the earliest. The United States is becoming kind of proof in the pudding here. You know, we're opening things up and then we're closing things back down again. We're opening things up, we're closing things back down again. So I realized, and my wife is higher risk, so I am being extremely cautious. I have not shot with a model and a makeup artist since March. I know. I do have my first shoot scheduled for 2 weeks from now. And indeed, when my model shows up, um, will do a temperature check. I will wear a mask for the day. Um, you know, I am going to be extremely careful because I don't want it. I don't want to get it. But anyway, that being said, I went ahead and I did not renew the lease. So I had to move everything back out. So I've moved it back home. I'm just about all set up, got everything put away, all that kind of stuff. Gonna have to have a big photography yard sale in a couple of weeks because I actually wound up picking up a bunch of grip gear and that I have no use for now. And at this point, even if it all ended tomorrow, I'm not gonna go back and sign for, you know, a new lease on another studio. I'm gonna stick with the studio that I have. So anyway, that being said, I have played with it a little bit just to, you know, basically go through the steps of the setup. Super, super simple. Works actually really, really well. I have not had a chance yet to play with it for video because a couple people have come up with a really cool hack where you can actually use it to shoot video wirelessly, like live stream, that kind of stuff. That part I have not done yet, but probably in the next week or so, we'll dig into that. Okay. Coolly. What do you have for sale? A bunch of so first of all, when you've been doing photography as long as I have, and especially given the last 5 years I've been doing YouTube and will wind up either building things or picking things up to, you know, do a YouTube video, but I don't really use it that much. I've got a lot of, you know, kind of oddball random things, but actually the main things for the other studio that I'm going to unload, I have a bunch of C stands, which I will never use in this location because if you guys remember from my video, I have the swing arms on the wall, so I don't need as many stands. I have a whole bunch of modifiers because in the last, I guess it's about 6 months ago, I dropped the sponsorship for my modifiers and went with a different system. So yeah, Todd Strong. Listen, I knew this would happen. Everybody's saying, look, I'll take that and I'll take that. Yeah, no, the TV and the stand, that's staying. That will get used you know, many times over. But I will be posting, you know, what I have as soon as I have it all together and have a list. So first witness, it's possible that COVID-19 will act as a flu virus, period mutation, so there will not be a long-lasting vaccine available. Yeah, I mean, look, the reality of it is I don't disagree with you, and the reality is we don't know. I mean, we really know very little about this except how devastating, you know, it could be, right? So time will tell, right? I mean, that's kind of the key. So I don't think that as much as I want to be out of the woods and I want to be back to normal, um, I don't think it's going to be that way for, you know, a while. So Robert Clay, any card recommendations for the EM1X? I am 1000% into Delkin cards. I don't feel that there's anything better. Full disclosure, I am sponsored by Delkin, but the overwhelming majority of my Delkin cards I have paid for full price from a photo retailer. The sponsorship came along afterwards, and it's a sponsorship where I generate some content for them. So it's not like they hand me, you know, tons of memory cards. So I'm all about Delkin. Made in the U.S., excellent specs, love them. So yeah, coolly. Unfortunately, Lexar, you couldn't pay me enough money to use Lexar. You got to learn a little bit about the history of the company and all that kind of stuff, but bottom line, at the end of the day, man, if that's what you have and if it's working well for you, go for it. I mean, that's awesome. So, Ron, if I buy some of your equipment, will that make me a better photographer? Well, Ron, contrary to what I try to teach people, since it's mine, you know, there's that possibility. It might help. No, I'm kidding. Unfortunately, I can't make that kind of a guarantee. So, anyway, gang. All right, look at that, 7 o'clock. So if I start saying goodnight now, I'll only be a minute or two late by the time I finish. So, hey, as always, you guys are awesome. Great conversation tonight. We had some good topics, good questions. Cooley, I don't feel like I actually helped you with your pool shoot thing, man. So you know how to reach me on social media. If you want to put together some more information and maybe even like take me a quick snapshot of your hot tub and your swimming pool, just to show you that I wasn't trying to be difficult, I'll try and, you know, give you a little bit of input. I hate leaving anybody hanging, but yeah, that's just such a broad question. There's no way that I could really answer that and be super helpful. So you know how to get a hold of me if you want to, you know, follow up with that, and I'll try and help you out. Okay. In the meantime, gang, though, you know, even we had all this talk about, you know, virus stuff, and look, you know, I get it, and I'm not, it's not my job to mother the photography world, right? Me personally, I think it's way too early to be back doing shoots like nothing ever happened. But at the same time, you know, everybody has different tolerances for risk, et cetera, et cetera. So the bottom line is this, right? Just remember, you know, everything that you do as a human being, not just a photographer, but it impacts every other human being right now. The fact of the matter is we're all impacted by this. So please, at least just be smart. And yes, do anything and everything you can to use your cameras. You know, for me, ironically, since March, I haven't done near as much shooting, but I've been so much more involved with photography in the last 4 months than I have been like in the last 3 years, because I threw myself at it, because I knew that in part it would be a calming thing for me. It's my safe space, right? So, you know, before I was traveling and this and that, I was spending time in airports, I was doing all this kind of stuff. That's not taking pictures. That's not photography. Now it's been like nonstop for me. And actually, I love it. It's great. So I still want to get back to shooting. I still want to pick up that camera. And I'm going to start to find ways to do it. I'm going to test the waters, you know, but we're going to have to be patient, and we're all going to have to work at this. So hopefully you will all keep that in mind, you know, as you get back out there and start shooting. But do find ways to shoot. And you know what? Even if you got to take abstract pictures in your house, just to be able to use that camera and handle it, and just so your wife's not getting on your case because you spent all that money and you're not using it, do it, right? So, but in the meantime, gang, seriously, you know the drill. Have a great week. Hope to see you at some of my upcoming online presentations. Hope to see you next week. If you're part of my mentor group, Friday night this week for our Zoom meeting. If you're not, you should check it out. The information's on my website. But as always, thank you. And remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TOGCHAT. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.